Then we move on to Tomco. Tomco Communications, where I first met you. But you say you started Tomco in 1970. What prompted you to start Tomco?
I was still working at Aertech. One of the original, the folks that the first boss I ever had in California at Mel Labs was a person by the name of Pete Latourette, who was kind of a scholarly guy, Stanford guy. He and his brother both, but his brother was an attorney, and so was his dad, out of L.A. But he had started a company called PML, or Peninsula Microwave Lab, and it also was his initials, Peter M. Latourette. But he did a lot of military-type applications for doing filters, almost exclusively filters. And he had a salesman by the name of Phil DeVoe, who I got to know reasonably well also. They actually did some work for us at Aertech when we didn't have to integrate some filters and things with amplifiers or mixers or things like that. So we bought quite a few products from them. But anyway, those guys took me to lunch one day and said, we heard of a guy in Phoenix who is going to be making 10,000 things called super taps for this cable TV business. What do you know about it? I said, I don't know anything. I said, I remember a guy calling me once from Canada wanting to know about what kind of amplifiers we were using. And he told me he was doing cable TV, and I'm not sure I really understood what he was talking about. But anyway, we looked a little bit into it, but not a lot. And they agreed to, Peter loaned me some money. His dad put in some money, his brother put in some money, he did, and so did Phil. And hence we started Olson Technology. I'm sorry, Tomco. And the reason that I wanted to leave was that, Aertech had been getting into the spacecraft business, doing high-rel spacecraft components, where we'd sell a 1-inch cube mixer and sell 200 pounds of paper to go with it. And, it all had to be, everything was certified, they needed to be gold-plated, they needed this, they needed that. But it was all kinds of detail, really wasn't a lot of engineering anymore. And I guess I was getting impatient. I remained on the board of directors, but I resigned, and we started Tomco. And did that, started in our garage in Los Altos.
Now, you started without any customers?
Didn't have a clue. Didn't have a clue. But anyway, I was still doing some consulting for Aertech, making a couple of bucks. And we started the company with $25,000. And that's all we ever put into it.
Wow.
Now, I had a bank loan. I had to pay Peter back, so I had a bank loan that he helped me arrange. That's how I had my stock, was I borrowed money because I didn't have any. At the time, Aertech stock really wasn't worth much because it was private. Hadn't yet sold to TRW. Sold a few shares to Jay Stone, who was a rep in the Bay Area at the time. There's still a rep company called Jay Stone and Associates. Jay's in his 90s. I know he's still alive. But anyway, Phil, in one of his forays into San Francisco, stopped at the offices of Pacifica Cablevision, which was up in Daly City, and at Daly City Cablevision, which was in Daly City, and met with a guy by the name of Henry Gastman. And Henry Gastman was one of these maverick guys that if everybody was marching to the right, Henry went to the left. And he was a real maverick. And he wanted to do things differently and better than the next guy. And they were in the process of installing. They had an old tube system in Pacifica. And then they also had this 10 cable thing called a Discade system, which was a bundle of 10 RG59s going down the street. And literally a switch out on the pole that would switch between the cables, and you had 2 channels on each cable.
Wow.
For 20 channels.
So you could probably go a long ways because you're only putting 2 channels on that.
It was very low frequency, yeah. But anyway, that was a system that was done by Ameco, and he bought it. And we're actually they installed it. Anyway, they had a lot of problems with that. And so he asked me to look into it, so I did. He paid me to recommend a few things, which we did. And then at the time, he had just gotten the franchise for Fremont, which was, a large area, not a lot of people at the time. This was in 1970 time frame. Not very many people, but area-wise, I think it was like the 10th largest city in California. Fremont's pretty big; it covers a lot of territory. Anyway, he needed a lot of different things to get signals down the hill. And then there was a guy that he had, which was an old, matter of fact, former associate of Jerry Laufer's, old Mormon guy from Idaho by the name of Jay Dennis. And Jay, he was a sharp old guy. He had some. He wanted to do this system a little differently, but semi-conventionally. Anyway, I advanced the idea of a set-top box that used inverted carriers. So it made the set-top box a lot simpler. And I prototyped it, and we showed it to them. So then we had to make the boxes that inverted the channels because nobody made such things. So I did that. So I was getting business from Mr. Gastman. And then we built a system off the mountain, down on return band channels that up-converted back into the head end. And that brought in a considerable amount of dough, all of those things.
Now, the set-tops, were those actually deployed in the households?
Yes. Yeah, that's the system. It was the first Anaconda system that used the HP hybrid. The doorknob, the ones that got so hot you could never touch. And, HP had a great reputation for quality things. This one never measured up. It was really bad stuff. But it was done by Anaconda. There was a guy by the name of Bob McIlvaine who hung around the cable TV business for a long time, but he was executive vice president of Anaconda Copper out of New York City, and he was responsible for a group that they put together down in Southern California that was building cable amplifiers. He also had a cable company where they had developed a cable semi-hard line. It was foil covered. They called it Seal-O-Matic cable, but everybody else called it seal to maybe. It was pretty bad stuff. I had a patent on it, but that's what they deployed it. They deployed their amplifiers in the system. Henry had heard of a through Al Jolson, which was his accountant.
Al Jolson?
Al Jolson. Marshall David Jolson, but Al was his name. He was known as Al. Knew somebody who knew somebody, Japanese, who did. So anyway, one day, who walks in my office but a gentleman by the name of Mr. Yoshiki Furuhata.
Mr. Furuhata.
With a green knit tie. Broken English, but quite understandable and very smart. And he said he was there because Mr. Gastman wanted him to build set-top boxes. And he represented the General Corporation of Japan. Well, they built them. I can't remember how many thousand of these converters. But again, Henry, because he stuck his neck out for, crazy things, he took the hit for the system because the cable was horrible, the amplifiers were horrible, and it just didn't hold up. So anyway, he was let go. He moved up to Oregon. I lost. I didn't do much with him I never really did any more business with him as far as cable TV. We certainly remained friends until his death, which was he died quite young, really. But that was really the beginning of our products.